All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Cadre's webinar on personal preparedness in the workplace. I'm Marcia Hovey, the Executive Director of Cadre. And for those of you that this is your first webinar that we've presented, welcome. We're glad you're here. And to those that are back for more, we're glad that you like us. Okay, the objectives for today, this is a personal emergency preparedness in the workplace. So we're going to give you personal emergency preparedness information. In fact, you're going to be the first group that sees the When Seconds Count earthquake safety in the workplace presentation that Cadre did. And that is being translated into 17 languages right now. So that will be something that you'll be able to share with everyone of every language. Then besides that, we're going to give you some tools. So as an organization, you can motivate folks to prepare while they're at work and help just, make that culture of preparedness, both at home and in the workplace. And then we'll round it out with some questions and answers. And if anybody has any other ideas to share as we're going through the topics, feel free to put them in the chat at any time. But we will at the end, we'll open it up so that you can actually speak. And with that, I am happy to introduce to you our presenter for today, Lynn Brown. And Lynn is the retired emergency manager for the city of Mountain View. And he has agreed to come out of retirement to become one of our emergency management professionals, and we're very excited about that. So I'm going to turn it over to Lynn right now.
Thank you very much, Marcia. Hey, welcome everybody. Glad you could make it today. She said, my name's Lynn Brown, and I'm an emergency manager with Cadre. I'm very excited to share this information with you today. Cadre, as you know, is the network of nonprofits that respond to the community to help out during disasters and do your thing, during regular times as well. And we just want to thank you and thank United Way for funding this project, and Clear Global for providing translations of presentation materials. So just to let you know, you've probably heard a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about today, but we're trying to put it all in one package so you can have it together. And this works, we're kind of looking at two levels, and one is personal preparedness for every individual, and also what you can do as an organization. So you as a nonprofit or a community-based organization, how you can continue to get your employees, your patrons, everybody is better ready for a large-scale earthquake or other kinds of disasters. We tend to focus on earthquakes, but as we say in emergency management, it's job security. Other bad things can happen. Fires, floods, earthquake, terrorist attacks, tsunamis, all kind of bad stuff can go on. So we want to be sure you're ready for all that stuff, if at all possible. All right, Marcia, next slide, please. Okay. So this is stuff we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about emergency alerts, give you some information about different systems we have and ways you can find out about bad things that are happening, how to protect yourself and your home specifically during an earthquake. We're going to specifically focus in on steps you can take after an earthquake, how to find resources and information. There's going to be a lot of stuff in the chat where you can pick up. We have several links and things in there you can pick up, so you have places for information. And we'll also, toward the end, talk a little bit about immigration support. Often, and we'll talk more about this at the end, but often when people that may not be documented, large-scale disaster, they may be frightened to come to an area to get help, and we're going to talk about that. So on the left of your screen, you'll see the disaster ready guide, and a translation versions are also available on the Cadre website. If you go to the website and look under earthquake, you'll find that page, a fair amount of information there. And if you can't download the information, just contact Cadre, and we'll find a way to be sure you can get all the information. There's also another document in there called Earthquake Safety Resources that lists all the links, all the instructions, all the stuff that we're going to talk about today, so you can take a look at them later. So we'll move ahead. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so the big thing to remember, so generally right now, if you have a problem, if you have a fire, you have a car accident, if you stub your toe, you can call 911 and you can count on a pretty quick response, depending on your city. Somebody's going to come and help you pretty quickly. In the event of a large-scale disaster, that's not going to happen, because if something happens in one city, for example, all the other cities in the Santa Clara County can help that one city. If something happens that affects all the cities at the same time, each city is going to be pretty busy with their own events and not able to get that mutual aid to help other agents. So In the event of large scale disaster, a big one, 911 is just going to be completely overwhelmed. It's going to be tough to get those calls. So the big idea, what police and fire departments are going to do is they're going to start prioritizing their responses. They're going to go out to life safety incidents first before they go to other more mundane things they might come to normally. So they're going to go where the most people are to help. So if there's a school with a problem, they're going to go to the school. If there's a mall with a bunch of people down, they're going to go there. They're probably not going to come to your house very specifically to help you out in that moment. So again, you may have to wait a few minutes for that help to get there. So it's very important that you be prepared on your own. So you've taken some steps to get your home ready. You've taken some steps to get yourself ready. And again, I just can't stress, so there could be a few minutes before help comes in a major disaster of some kind. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about some of the alert systems we have here in Santa Clara County. There's a couple of different ways that you can get the word out. And one of the big ones is called Alert SCC. That stands for Alert Santa Clara County. And that's a way, it's a direct notification system. So everyone in a specific city, a specific area code, a neighborhood, or the entire county can be notified. You can get them on your smartphone, you can get it by voice, you can get a text, you can get a landline, or you can get it by email. So it's a very good system. I think it works very well. And all you have to do and so if you have a landline phone and you have a listed number, you're already in the database. You do need to put your cell phone and your email in. So you can go to alertscc.com and you can register all those different ways you want to be contacted. And again, you can specify which one you want, text, email, voice, whatever it might be that works best for you. So that's a great way to go. There's also another system called Nixle, and you can go to nixle.com to look that up. Some cities, police and fire departments and others, they send an email and text message. You can also sign up by texting your zip code to 888-777. And again, you can select the types of alerts that you'd like to receive. It can be police activity, missing persons, street closures, any local events, and they can also use it in large scale disasters. So this one's kind of a hybrid. You can use it for large scale disasters and also just for everyday events and things like that. Now, there are also a thing called wireless, wireless emergency alerts. Now, one of the issues we have right now is these messages are only sent out in English. So if you can't read English, you need to think about a plan to get the information interpreted for you so there's a better solution. Before I retired from the city, I recall we were talking about this problem a lot, and hopefully down the line, we'll figure something out to get it going. Again, the wireless emergency alert does not require registration, but you have to check your smartphone and be that you want to be sure that your emergency notifications is turned on your smartphone. And again, you can take a look at the earthquake safety resources document, and we'll talk about how you can do that. So those are three very good programs: Alert SCC, which is just Santa Clara County; Nixle, which tends to be just local to a specific jurisdiction; and then finally, the wireless emergency alerts. And those go out pretty much automatically, so everyone has that. And you can trust these sources. When you get something from Alert SCC, it's been vetted. We're not going to put something out, unless it's true, and we're going to give you good information about what you need to do in the event of emergency. Okay, and one more. Go ahead, please. There's also MyShake, and this is a pretty new one. MyShake, it's nice to know when earthquake's about to happen. And it's a phone app that gives you just a few seconds of warning before the ground starts shaking. I was just on vacation, but I came back, I saw there had been an earthquake recently, and a lot of people got notified very quickly by the shake alert. It doesn't sound like a lot of time, but if you have just a few minutes to get better prepared, it's going to help you in the long run. It might be time to get down off a ladder, step away from a window, give you a chance to take cover. So it's available for iPhones and Android phones. You can go to the Apple Store or the Google Play and download these things. Yeah, and I'm seeing Marcia just noted Santa Rosa got about 10 or 20 seconds during the earthquake, so that's a pretty good bit. So we're going to give you real quick here. We're going to play it so you hear what it sounds like when this alarm actually goes off.
Earthquake. Drop cover, hold on. Shaking expected. Earthquake. Drop cover, hold on. Shaking expected.
Okay, so that's a pretty clear indication that something's coming. So how about it? If you're just at home on a Saturday morning and the My Shake alert goes off on your phone, what would you do? So here we go. For example, here's an earthquake simulation. Now you can see this room is set up. You'll see when we start the shaking, you probably wouldn't have all the same stuff in your room, but it's a very good illustration of what goes on during an earthquake. So let's go ahead and run that if you would, Marcia. So again, that was a whole lot of shaking going on, and I'm just going to talk about that real quick before I go on to the next one. So you noticed in that room, there's a lot of stuff in there you probably wouldn't have in your room. You know, the filing cabinet, the water heater, things like that. So some of the things you want to be sure, the things where if it's strapped down properly, it's not going to fall on you. So that's part of mitigation, is being sure you've done the things before an earthquake to take care of it. We'll talk more about that a little bit as we go along. But I did want you to notice something. Amid all that shaking, the table didn't tip over, and if something fell, it would hit the table and not you. So in the event of an earthquake, you want to drop, cover, and hold. You know, get under something firm and hang on. If you happen to be in a wheelchair, you want to lock your wheels, cover your head as best you can, and hold on, because it may shake you around. And you know, it's pretty common. People, you know, what should I do in an earthquake? Drop, cover, and hold. If you're outside, you're better off to stay outside. Look out for trees, power lines, things like that falling in. If you're inside, you're better to stay inside. If you're trying to run outside, you may run outside just in time to meet something falling from the second floor, something falling you. So you're much better off just to drop, cover, and hold, and hang on. Okay, a whole lot of shaking going on, you know. So what do you think? What could fall over in your office or in your house? What could fall on you guys next time you have an earthquake? I'm checking the chat. Yeah, I mean, think about it. What's your house going to look like? A big thing, if you'll notice the TV, most people have much larger TVs now. And if you don't have it secured to the wall, it's very likely it's going to fall over. So you might want to think about having either secured to your wall or getting it strapped down somehow so that it doesn't fall. And pretty much everything in there is able to fall. But you know, if I was in this living room right here, you can see that on the screen, I'd probably be under that coffee table. I welcome you to join me, but I'm going under pretty quickly because that's the safest place to be in that room. You don't want things falling all over you. A table, a desk, something. If you can't get to a table, can't find it, just find a safe spot and cover your head. There's also, sometimes people think about, you know, standing in a doorway. I'm sure you may have heard that before, kind of an urban legend about, oh, I'm going to stand in a doorway. Actually, where that came from, if you look at some pictures of the San Francisco earthquake, a lot of times the brick buildings would fall down, but the door frame would still be standing there because it's wood, so it didn't fall. And a lot of people thought, hey, well, the door frame didn't fall, so that's where I'm going to stand. That's the best place for me to hide. And actually, if you're standing in a doorway, the door might swing and slam on you, and then you have a problem. So be careful with that. If you happen to be in bed, your best bet is to stay in bed and cover your head with your pillow. Now, along with that, you might want to look around your room, and if you have a heavy hanging picture over your bed, you want to double secure that or maybe move it somewhere else. So anything that might fall on you, you want to move. Another thing to think about, if you live in a mobile home, is the bracing underneath can break through the floor. So you want to think about that and try to elevate yourself, get on a couch or a bed or a chair, and again, cover your head. As I mentioned, don't stand in the doorway. That is not your best bet. That is just not the best place to be. So the shaking stopped. What should you do next? I think we're on the next slide, Marcia. You know, so you want to think about what could you have done to avoid the damage? You know, as they say, you know, a stitch in time saves 9. So think about what you can do to better prepare. If you look on the slide there, you notice that water heater is double strapped. And I learned this, and the code does change. A few years ago, I had to change my water heater, and the guy came out. It had only had one wrap of the plumber's tape around it. And he said, hey, you're not up to code. So we put the double one on. So you can see if it just has one, it's too low, it may tip over. And if you put two and secure it to the studs, you can't just secure it to the drywall, then it's very likely to hold that thing in. You might also want to look at different devices. You can get ways to keep your cabinets latched. They have the childproof locks and things like that. There's a lot of stuff out there to secure it, because anything in there is going to fall. So generally what we say in emergency management is your house is probably not going to fall down and hurt you or kill you. It's the things inside your house that are going to fall on you and hurt you and maybe kill you. So you really want to be aware of that. Try not to keep really heavy things up on high shelves, because if they start falling, and it's always going to happen at the worst time, right? You're going to be in your kitchen when something happens and the heavy thing on the high shelf falls. Several years ago, when I worked for a different city, we did a tour. We just went around to different people's offices and took a look at their office just to kind of see what they had in there. And you'd be amazed at somebody's desk, and they have an overhead right by it, and they have a 50-pound bowling trophy sitting right on top of that overhead, waiting to fall off and crack them on the head. So just take a very practical eye and look around at things that might fall on you. Do I want that to fall on me? I don't. Do I want that cabinet swinging open? I don't. And also protecting your stuff. You don't want it to break. So if you can get it secured, get it squared, there's different ways to secure things. There's a product called Quick Wax you can find online. And it's a way to stick, if you have glassware and things like that, and you want to display, you can adhere them to the shelf so they won't fall off, won't fall off and break when something does happen like that. Okay. So again, just do a safety check. You want to go through your house and be very thorough. Take a look around at each of your rooms. Stand in the middle of the room and look around. What could fall on you? If that thing falls, will it fall on me? Is it expensive to replace? Do I want to have to replace something that I've had, for many years? It's a family heirloom. I don't want to do it. So how to prevent it from falling? So again, remove heavy objects from high shelves or over your bed that might fall on you. Cabinet locks, a very good thing to do for your dishes, and earthquake straps. If your TV is not secured to your wall, you want to think about earthquake straps. So if it's still just on the stand, it doesn't fall over and get you. Want to take a look as well at your cleaning supplies. Look at what you have mixed. For instance, if you have bleach and chlorine next to each other, if they spill and mix, it causes a pretty nasty gas that can mess you up. So be careful with that. And I can't emphasize, water heaters are a big thing. They're large, they're heavy, and they're very prone to falling over and shaking during an earthquake. So you want to be sure it's strapped down, because it can also start a fire if it falls over. And another thing, as we talk about supplies, there's water in your water heater you can use as an emergency water supply, if you can get that out, right? So you want to be sure you have straps on the upper and lower of your water heater, and keep it strapped down so it doesn't fall over on you. So know where it is and take a look at it and be sure that it's strapped down. Okay, on to the next one, please. So after the shaking, here's an action step you can take. First thing you're going to do, of course, is make sure that you're okay. Take a look around. How am I doing? Am I okay? And then if you're okay, can you help other people? So let's talk about just some of the steps you can walk through. First off, you want to help anybody who might be injured. So take a basic first aid course. If you ever, most of us had one, it's a good idea to get a refresher. Go ahead and take a first aid course. Red Cross has classes. There's also apps you can download. It's kind of interesting now. When I first started in emergency management, way back when, we had to print everything out. You had to get brochures and handouts, and now everything is online. So if you just take a look around, go to the FEMA.org website, FEMA.gov, just do emergency supplies or preparedness. There's a lot of information out there. But the first thing is helping people that might be injured. And there's some very basic steps you can do: opening airways, treat for bleeding, treat for shock, and stabilize broken bones. And also, it could be, if you have pets, you might want to think of first aid for your pets too. Pets are very, very important part of the family, and you want to be sure they're well taken care of. And again, you can go, there's hardcore wilderness medicine courses you can take. They teach you all kind of stuff, or just a very basic first aid. But you want to be really comfortable with being able to treat minor bleeding, treat people for shock and things like that, and you'll be way ahead of the game when that could happen. Okay, next one, please. Next up, we're going to talk about gas leaks, and it's a big thing. A lot of homes do have natural gas. Some are all electric. I see there's a push to get more places to be all electric, but a lot of places do have natural gas. So you want to be sure to get that you want to look out for leaks. It can cause explosions and can cause fires. If you get the right amount of oxygen and gas in a room, a tiny spark can set it off. Even just turning on a light switch can create a spark that can cause an explosion and a fire. Now, a lot of people think, well, do I need to turn off my gas just because there's an earthquake? No, you don't. In fact, I've heard stories back in the day after an earthquake, the Good Samaritan grabbing his wrench, going down the block and turning off everybody's gas all the way down. I'm going to talk in a minute about how to know if you need to turn it off or not. But if you don't need to turn it off, do not turn it off. If you do turn it off, you need to have PG&E come to check it before you turn it back on, because there could be a leak in there that you can't notice. Again, back in 1989, after Loma Prieta earthquake, some people just turned off their gas automatically, and then they had to wait for PG to come back out and turn the gas back on. So, that's a lot of cold showers. So you want to be aware when you need to turn your gas off and when you don't. So how do you know, next one, please. How do you know if your gas is leaking? So they do put a chemical in gas. Gas itself is actually colorless and odorless. There's nothing you can tell about it. But they do put a chemical in it. It smells pretty nasty. It smells rotten, kind of like rotten eggs. In fact, it was a great story. Several years ago up near San Francisco, there's a company that makes the chemical they put into gas to make it smell bad when it leaks. And they had a leak at their facility. And they had people all over the county or all over the town going, hey, I smell a gas leak. And it turned out just a leak from the factory that made the stuff. So they got to square away. But you'll know if it's leaking, it does have so. So the best thing, use your nose, just kind of sniff around. Sniff around your appliances that have natural gas. It smells kind of like sulfur or like rotten eggs. So that's what you'll smell when you smell it. If you smell natural gas at an appliance, you can turn it off. Usually there's a shutoff valve to that appliance. Now your stove is probably hard to get to because it's behind the stove. Other appliances, it might be a little bit easier. So you can turn off the gas at the appliance, or you can turn off the turn off the gas for the entire house. And we're going to talk about that. Now, once you get the gas off, you do want to open up the windows and let some air into the room, because again, higher concentrations of gas and the right amount of gas and oxygen, that can cause the explosion when you get a small spark on it. So let's go to the next slide, please. You smell, okay, here we go. So if you pay PG&E bill, you're going to have a gas meter if you have gas in your home. So again, your first thing you're going to do is you're going to check three things. Can you smell natural gas? That rotten egg sulfur odor that I mentioned earlier. If you can smell that, that means you have a gas leak. Now, if the gas leak is inside your house, you can turn off the gas and you're good to go. You've stopped the gas from flowing into the house. If it's outside your meter, there's not much you can do about it except run away because you can't turn that off. Another thing you might hear is listen for a hissing sound or a whistling sound because the gas is under pressure. So as it goes through, it's going to make some noise, and it may sound a little something like this. If you'll play that, please, Marcia. Sounds kind of evil, doesn't it? But yeah, and you will definitely hear that hissing sound. Over the course of my career, I went to several, not house gas leaks, but large scale gas pipeline leaks. And you can hear that sound, and that's a clear indication you need to get away from there. That's a dangerous thing. So you're going to smell for gas, you're going to listen for hissing or a gas escaping kind of sound. And then finally, you want to check and see, are the dials spinning? If you take a look at your meter and they're spinning around and around like you're burning, you're running all your appliances at the same time, that's an indication the gas is passing through the meter and there's a leak inside. And that's not a bad thing. So you want to take a look at it. Now, if you see any of those things, if you can smell gas, if you can hear that hissing sound, if you see your dial spinning, that means you need to turn off your gas. And so if you look on the lower right-hand side of that slide there, you'll see the gas is in the on position. You see that little nut that's straight up and down. That means the gas is flowing. What I tell people is look at your gas meter, and if you look at the one on the left, you see the flying saucer thing above it. I call it the flying saucer thing. That's actually a pressure reduction valve. But if you look at that, look downstream from it, and there is that nut, which as you see is going straight up and down. To turn it off, you just turn it across, and that turns the gas off. You give it a quarter turn, and that'll turn the gas off. And I think, is that on the next slide, Marcia? Oh, here's our gas again. Okay, yeah, here we go. This is a closer view up. So you can buy specialized wrenches that will fit your gas meter, or you can just use a wrench. As you can see in this illustration here, we just have your common crescent wrench, a monkey wrench. You can also get a standardized wrench that fits that. Some folks actually attach it to their gas meter, but that's up. So you need 12 to 15. A bigger one is actually better. It gives you a little bit longer throw, and it makes it easier to gives you more leverage, so you're easier to turn it off and on. Again, you don't have to buy an expensive wrench. You can just use a regular press wrench, or again, emergency supply stores do sell wrenches that are specifically fit. Now, be sure and check that it fits your gas meter. I've heard stories of people buying a specialized gas meter or a gas wrench, and then you're going to have to check it and it doesn't turn off. So any hardware store should have that. If you are going to store it outside, if you're going to go ahead and attach the wrench to your gas meter so you have it right there handy, you can either put a little grease on it, a WD-40, or put it in a Ziploc bag, and that might keep it from rusting. If you're not going to do that, be sure you dial it to the right size, because if it's too big, you won't be able to turn off the gas. So again, one more time, if you want to turn the gas off, you put the wrench on the nut and you turn it a quarter turn. And you can see it's going straight up and down. You're cutting off the gas. You're turning it so it's a quarter turn across, and that actually stops the gas flow from going through the meter. If you do, again, as I mentioned, if you turn it off, don't turn it back on. And the reason for that is some of the appliances that you might have, that you have in your home, might rely on the pressure the pressure of the gas in the line to keep some of the little seals in place. And you need to have PG&E check it before they turn it back on. They have a sniffer, they have a meter that they can use to check it and be sure that it's actually okay to turn your gas back on. Now, I mean, you can turn it back on. It's just that easy. You turn it off, you turn it back on. But if you turn it off, it's a very good idea to have PG&E come out and check it out for you to be sure you get it turned back on, that they've done everything safe before you can turn it back on. Another thing to think about here is also, when was the last time your gas was turned off? You know, maybe it's when your house was built. Maybe it's when the washer, the dryer or the furnace was put in. So what you want to do is check your meter, check your turnoff valve, and see if you can turn it off. So grab a wrench, put it on there, and don't turn it off. Just see if you can wiggle it. Turn it like just an 1/8 of an inch, and just see if you can wiggle it. If you can't wiggle it, you can call PG&E, and they'll be happy to come out and take it. They'll come out and be sure it's done. Don't get another wrench that's in WD-40 and try to take care of it yourself. Okay. Now, something else I mentioned earlier about PG&E checking, they will also be sure that your pilot lights are relit correctly, because if you turn the gas on, the pilot light isn't working, then again, you're putting gas back into your home. So know where your gas meter is, have the tool to turn it off, know when to turn it off, know where to turn it off or how to turn it off. And again, as I said, be sure not to turn it back on until PG&E gets there and checks it for you, so you can actually turn that thing back on for you. Okay, so next, so not everybody lives in a house and has a single valve. So as you can see from the photo here from the slide, in an apartment building or condominium complex, there could be a whole row of gas meters. So you want to take a look at it. You might want to talk to your apartment manager or your management company and be sure if they're not marked, so you know which one is yours, and also see it has a main. Again, if you live in an apartment building, there should be a building manager or a maintenance person. They may be able to turn off gas to the entire building, or again, you might be able to turn off just to your unit, but you need to know where your gas shutoff valve is. You need to know which apartment you're dealing with, so you're able to turn that off. So that's a very important thing to think about. So take a look around. It may be, now again, if you could go back for 1 second, Marcia, I'm sorry. So take a look at that. Now, maybe you see these are it looks like they're pretty out in the open. It may also be behind a closed and locked door. So again, talk to your maintenance folks and see if they're the only ones that have the key, if there's a key available, so you can get in there and turn that gas off just in case you need to. Just something to talk about either with your management company or the maintenance folks at your apartment complex. Okay, next one, please. And here's a big one. If the gas is leaking, you don't want any flames or any sparks or anything like that near it, because with the right concentration, it will explode. So if you're smoking a cigarette, that's not the time to go check your gas meter. And inside your house, something just as I mentioned earlier, something like just turning on the light switch can be enough to cause a spark and ignite that fire, ignite that gas and cause an explosion. Also, if there's enough outside, starting your car could give you enough smoke or could give you enough spark to light that thing up. So if you're out there and you smell it, it's not a good thing. So no flames, no sparks, anything near gas. The safest distance is about 330 feet. So roughly about 100 yards, about American football field. So you want to leave on foot, get your family, get your loved ones, get out of there, walk on foot. And again, the distance you want to be is about 100 yards away. Further is better. If you'd rather go 200 yards, that's a good thing. And if you can still smell the gas, move away and then use your cell phone to let them know about it. Not to tell too many war stories here, but when I worked for the city of Mountain View, we had a major gas leak down on Evelyn Avenue. They just put in a new gas line there and it started leaking. And I always remember that I was there as a public information officer. So a guy from the media came up and he's like, hey, can we get closer? And the chief said, if Lynn goes with you, sure, that's okay. And I'm like, oh, is that a good idea? So we walked up a little bit closer and a guy from PG&E came out. He said, stop, turn off your phone, back up, get out of here because there was enough gas. He was afraid just triggering the shutter in the camera or someone smoking a cigarette or their phone could actually cause that thing to go off. So stay far away from it. And if you're not sure, further away is better. And it's a good idea to talk to your neighbors about gas safety too. So, just in case they are, maybe they can turn your gas off or you can turn their gas off, but be sure they're aware of it as well. Okay. All right, let's go on to the next one. And again, there could be a big one. Now, if you see this happening in your neighborhood, that is not a good sign. That's not where you want to be. So there could be actual distribution lines through there. And a large leak like that is just not a good thing. Oh, sorry about that. So a large gas leak is bad. I'm sure you remember one a few years ago up the peninsula. Was that I can't remember the name of the town, but they had the large gas line just exploded and killed several people. So if it's outside, you can't turn that gas off. There's not a shutoff valve large enough for you to get to. You're going to be able to do that. Thank you, San Bruno. Thank you, Marcia. San Bruno is the town where that happened. And PG&E went back, inspected, and found the gas line had just blown out. And there were several areas where, it collided. So any match, cigarette lighter, starting a car, flipping a light switch, any kind of potential exposure there could cause that to go off. So for that kind of leak, you want to be even further away. If you can hear it, if you can see it, you're too close to it. In a large scale event like that, you're going to have PG&E will have to deal with that. They have shutoff valves further up. They can turn that off and take care of it. Okay, so enough about gas leaks. Let's talk about fires. So obviously a fire could start anytime. Fires happen every day anyway, but what could start a fire inside your house after an earthquake? Any thoughts on that? Put some stuff in chat and we'll see what's going on there. Folks talking about. Now, I'm glad you said candles. I personally hate candles. I do not allow candles in my house at all. If you're going to have an actual candle with a flame, you want to have a heavy, wide base so it can't tip over. I've been to several fires during my career with the fire department where it was candles. Kids play, a candle just there. The cat knocked it over. The kids knocked it over, things like that. So if your stove is on, a lot of fires start from a stove, candle gets knocked over, and there can be damage to electrical wiring, things like that. So the big difference is, you can put out a small fire. It's hard to put out a big fire. So what's the definition of a small fire? The one I like to use, if a fire is bigger than you are, it's too big to put out with a fire extinguisher. We're going to talk about extinguishers in just a minute, but it's an important thing to keep track of. Is it a small fire? Is it a big fire? If it's a small fire, you can try to put it out. If it's a big fire, you need to evacuate, close the door, and get everybody out. It's very important to close the door because it'll help confine the fire to that one particular room. It makes it much easier to spread. If you open the door, it's easy to spread across the hallway or into another room. So we're going to talk about in a minute, talk about how to use fire extinguishers. Very important. Even if you're going to use a fire extinguisher, have someone call 911. Let them know a fire is happening and get some help on the way. Now, again, on a day-to-day basis, they'll be there very quickly and able to put that fire out. In a large-scale emergency, you may be on your own. They may not be coming for a while to help you put that fire out. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about fire extinguishers. Okay, this is your standard ABC fire extinguisher. And it's it's a really important thing. I hope everyone has a fire extinguisher at home, in your home. I can't see you put hands up on this, but if you have an extinguisher at home, how long have you had it? If you've had it more than a couple years, you need to get it serviced. Now, in a commercial building, in an apartment building, by law, extinguishers are required to be serviced once a year. If you ever notice, if you live in an apartment or if you in your office, take a look at it. There's a tag on that, and it tells it when it was last serviced. In your home, nobody's going to come check it. I've had classes I've taught in the past and say, who has an extinguisher? Who's had it more than 5 years, more than 10 years? People have had extinguishers 20 years. And it may or may not work, but it's not going to be as good as an extinguisher that was serviced just 6 months ago. So think about that. This type of extinguisher can fight 3 different kinds of fire, and there are different types of fire. So an A stands for ashes, and that's ordinary combustibles. Anything that burns and just gives you ashes, paper, wood, cloth, things like that. And you can use water or an extinguisher to put out an A-type fire. A B-type fire, we call burning liquids, and that could be a grease fire on your stove. It could be gasoline or oil. A B-type fire, you definitely need an extinguisher. Do not put water on a B-type fire. And finally, C is for circuit. C is an electrical fire. If your TV or your computer or something bursts into flame, you don't want to be putting water on that. You want to use an ABC type extinguisher, and that's going a long way toward getting that fire put out. So A fires, A is for ashes, wood, paper, cloth, things like that. B fire, we say B is for bubbles, B is for burning liquids. You definitely do not want to put water on that. You want to use an ABC extinguisher. And finally, C, any kind of electrical issue, that's what you want to use to put out a C-type fire. Okay, let's talk a little bit more specifically about fire extinguishers. There's 3 main parts. And if you take a look, an important part right in the middle there is the pressure gauge. And you see a lot of red, and then you see that little narrow area, and that's the green space. That is where you want your extinguisher to be. The pressure gauge should be in the green. That's the spot. That means your extinguisher is fully charged and you're good to go. It also has 2 handles. And the bottom handle is just to carry it by. The bottom handle, you can do what you want with it. The top handle is the one that moves. When you squeeze that top handle, that's what actually activates the extinguisher and lets the stuff come out. And then finally, there's a pin. You'll notice an extinguisher has a ring pin, kind of like on a hand grenade, right? But there's a ring there, and it's usually secured by a plastic strip. And you can either muscle up and pull that, but to use the extinguisher, you have to pull the pin. So the pin keeps it from going off accidentally, and they do a pretty good job. So if you do need to pull the pin, you can see there they have just their finger hooked in it. What you want to do is grab it and twist it like you're starting car, like twisting car keys, and that will pop the zip tie off, and then you can, that way you'll be able to pull the ring and use extinguisher. And the 4th part is the nozzle. You see the nozzle down on the left there. It's secure to the extinguisher. So do take the nozzle loose from that. It has a thing just to secure it there. I've seen people use an extinguisher. They left the nozzle connected and tried to hold the extinguisher up sideways and use it. It's just not as effective that way. And it's very important to know how to use a fire extinguisher. I helped teach a class several years ago. We had a class for juvenile fire starters and kids that had started fires, had a problem. So the first day of the class, each kid has to stand up and say, "Why are you here today?" And the first one said, "Well, the first one, I was playing my matches and my folks caught me, so I'm here." Second kid, "Why did you?" He said, "I burned my house down." Okay, so what happened? He was burning some paper in his room, always a good idea. And somehow it caught fire. And there was smoke. Actually, he put it out, but there was some smoke in his room. So he grabbed the fan to blow the smoke out so he wouldn't get in trouble from his parents for having fire in the house. Well, as the wind blew over it, it ignited the embers and it caught the trash can on fire. And then it caught the drapes on fire. Now, his family had a fire extinguisher and he ran downstairs and grabbed it, but he didn't know how to use it. He did not know how to pull the pin. He didn't know how to use the nozzle. So by the time, he didn't get it figured out, he ran next door, called 911, and the house was fully involved and wound up burning the house down. So know how to use the fire extinguisher. Okay, so on the next slide here, we're going to talk about how to actually use a fire extinguisher. And we use an acronym called PASS. And PASS stands for pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. So to be able to activate the fire extinguisher, you need to first, as I mentioned earlier, you need to pull that pin. So you twist twist the ring like car keys. That'll pop it open. That'll pop it off. Then you can pull the pin. Then you want to take the nozzle loose from the extinguisher, aim the nozzle at the fire, and then squeeze the handle. And then very important, you want to sweep it back and forth. And you have to get close enough to the fire for the stud. You can't do it from across the room. You have to get within 5 to 10 feet of the thing that's burning. Now, once again, a fire extinguisher is effective on a small fire. If the fire is bigger than you are, it's too big for a fire extinguisher. But if you do it, so pulling pin, that lets you activate the extinguisher, aim the nozzle, squeeze the top handle down toward it, and then very important, you want to sweep it back and forth. You want to get as much of that material into the fire. It actually works to break up the chemical process that makes the fire burn. So sweep it back and forth. And Marcia, can you play that short video? And we'll show how it's done. And you can see on that how they swirl it back and forth. Now that particular fire, that's a training prop. And what they do is put water into that pan that you see there, and then float a mixture of gasoline and diesel fuel on top. So that really is a burning liquid fire you're putting out. Any kind of fire, you want as much of that material onto that fire and put it at the base of the fire. Don't squirt it up in the air and it fall down on it like rain. You want to get all that chemical right in there. And that was a 10-pound ABC extinguisher. Now here's the thing: when you push the handle on that extinguisher, it's not going to go on for an hour. You got about 10 to 15 seconds of stuff coming out of that extinguisher. That's all. That's as long as it's going to last. So again, a big fire is going to be too big for an extinguisher. So pull your pin, pass, pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. That is the best way to use a fire extinguisher. One more thing I forgot to mention on that: if you do have a pot on the stove that catches fire, one of your best tips is try putting a lid on the pot. That'll help get the fire down before it goes. And an extinguisher is going to make a big mess in there, but I'd rather have it in best than burn my house down. The last thing you want to do is put water into a burning, like if you're going to fry up something and you have some oil or some grease on the stove and it catches fire. If you put water on it, what's going to happen? The water is heavier than the oil. It's going to sink to the bottom, turn to steam, and then expand and blow out through the top and make a huge mess. It can be very big. It'll catch your cabinets on fire, and you just don't want to do that. So if it is a pot on the stove, try putting a lid on it before you hit it with the extinguisher. Okay, so we've talked about gas. We've talked about fire extinguishers. Let's talk about electricity. How do you turn off your electricity? You know, everybody has electricity, I assume, in your homes. Most of us now have breaker boxes. Some of the older homes might have fuses, but if you do need to turn off your electricity, you need to do it in a very specific way. So again, if you put out the fire and you think there'll be a problem, you want to turn off the electricity. So go to your electrical panel. You should know where your breaker box is. And if you're going to turn it off, you want to turn off all your breakers first and then turn off the main switch last. And the same deal, turning it back on, eventually you want to turn on all the, turn the main and then turn the other ones back on. But being sure, turn off your main switch last. Go to your breaker box, open it up, flip off each individual switch, be sure those switches are off. Then you can turn off your main and that'll take care of it. So you will have your gas will turn off. So you know how to put out a fire, and now we turned off electricity. Now let's talk about turning off water. I just saw a question about solar panels, and that is a very good question. And I have to admit, I honestly don't know. I need to do some research on that. I assume it ties into your electrical system. So if you're turning off your main, it's going to cut off power from the solar system. But we'll do some research on that and try to get back to you and let you know what to do specifically about solar panels. It is a new thing. A lot of people have them now. So another thing that can happen inside your house, obviously water can be swirling around, and earthquakes can cause pipes to break. And the water can cause all kind of damage to your house. It can, ruin your drywall, ruin your floors, ruin your sheetrock. So if you think you have a gas leak, it's a good idea to be able to turn that water off. So again, you need to know where your water shut off is. And again, that will depend if you live in a house, an apartment, or a condo. If you live in a house, it's probably going to be underground outside, but you need to see where your meter box is and where your where your water shut off is. You may have to take off a cover. You see on the lower left side there's an arrow pointing to the actual cover for this one. And you would need to pop that off and then get in there and find the gas meter. So again, this is something you don't want to be learning at 2 in the morning in the dark after an earthquake. You want to take a look at it now while the sun is shining and the birds are singing. You want to get in there and take a look at it and see just how to turn that off. Now, again, if you have if you live in an apartment, there's generally a shut off just for that apartment. So you want to find out where it is. I live in a condo and I know where mine is. It's downstairs in the garage, right where the water comes in. There's a big knob right there and you can just turn the water off. That will cut off water to the entire house because you want to stop that. You may or may not need a wrench to turn off the gas, or excuse me, to turn off the water at your meter. So again, that's something you want to take a look at. Some just have a knob, just like a regular faucet you can turn off. Others are going to require you to actually use a tool to get in there and actually turn that off. So take a look. Again, there's a lot of stuff you can do before something happens. You don't want to wait until something's happened and it's dark and you're stressed and bad things are happening. You want to know how to get in there, how to turn that gas off, how to turn that electricity off, and how to turn your water off. Utility control, very important. Okay, next up, so you've turned off the gas, you turned off the water, you've evacuated. So you want to take a look at your building damage. How can you tell if your building has been damaged? And there's various things are going to happen. So one that's very quickly you can tell if your doors are stuck, because as places shift during an earthquake, it can cause actual structural damage to the building. So if it's stuck, that could be a problem. Look for large cracks, and you can see, excuse me, you can see the pictures on the left here. You can see circled in yellow how on the windows at a particular apartment building there, you can see those X cracks. That is definitely a problem. That means there's going to be a problem in that building. It could fall down. And then finally, you want to look see if there's any foundation movement. If the foundation moves, the building has an issue. Now, the good news is most wood frame buildings do pretty well in seismic events. They're not going to fall down. They're not going to collapse, but they may move off the foundation, and that's something you want to be aware of. And if you look at the lower right picture there, you can see how it's kind of bowing out a little bit. That is definitely structural damage, and that's what we call a soft first story. So you can see there's a garage. I believe that's probably from San Francisco. There's a garage, and then the living quarters are up on top of that. And we have literally thousands of those buildings in Santa Clara County. Most cities have a place where they have the soft first story construction. And the issue is, you have all the weight on top and you have a support beam there. And if it's a problem with that, bad things can happen. Because here in California, the law of gravity is strictly enforced. So if something does fall, if something has a problem, it will fall, and you don't want it to fall on you. So again, a broken window, maybe not a big deal, but if you see a big crack like that one on the left, that is certainly an issue. You do not want to spend any time in that structure. You want to get people out as quickly as you can. Do not go back in there. Now, doing this presentation quickly, we're not going to make you a structural engineer. You're not going to be able to check a building and say, this or that, but eventually the city will send inspectors out. You've probably seen pictures after earthquakes. They'll put up a tag, a green tag, a yellow tag, or a red tag. A green tag means the building's fine. You can go in and out as you please. A yellow tag means just entering very quickly to get stuff out. And then finally, a red tag means you can't go in that building. It's at high risk of dropping, at high risk of collapsing. So anytime you see diagonal cracks coming from a window or a door, that's a sign of structural damage. You don't want to be inside that building. The other big thing to look for in a building are the vertical lines straight up and down, the horizontal lines straight across. And if they're off kilter, that can indicate there's a problem with the structure of that building. Now, some buildings, I know there's one here in Sunnyvale, there's a Google building, it looks funny, it leans a little bit, but that's the way to design it. But your home is generally pretty straight up and straight across. So anytime you see bowing, you see cracks on like that, that's a bad thing. You don't want to be inside that structure. And you want to get yourself out and tell others not to go in there. And something to keep in mind now, after an earthquake, there's going to be aftershocks. So something might look okay, yeah, I've got that, it's fine, no worries. An aftershock could make it worse. It could make it fall down, or it could make the crack worse. So you want to be sure to take a look at that. And again, be prepared to evacuate, get out and stay out. It's a dangerous step. Okay, next slide, please. And there we go. And the next step, so you're taking care of, so the first always, you're going to take care of yourself. That's your most important thing. Be sure you're taken care of, be sure you're squared away. So after you take care of yourself and your family, you can start to check out your neighbors. Now, it does help if you know your neighbors, right? If you met them, you've talked to them before, maybe you're not meeting at 2 in the morning after an earthquake. So see if anybody else needs help. And because you've taken this class and hopefully other classes, you may know more about it than they do. And you can give them advice, stop them from doing something dangerous. You want to be able to help them out. Your neighborhood is a very important network. And you've heard the saying, it takes a village. So if everyone kind of works together, if you share resources, you share support, that goes a long way. So knowing your neighbors is a good thing. There's also a great program called Cert, Community Emergency Response Team Training. And this is near and dear to my heart. I coordinated a program for Cert for many years in Mountain View, Community Emergency Response Teams. It's a much more in-depth class. It's about 20 hours of training, and they teach you all kinds of stuff. You learn stuff about basic preparedness, a very extended portion of what we're talking about here today. You learn fire safety, utility control, you use disaster medical operations, which is very different than standard first aid. Standard first aid is built on the idea that I can do CPR until the ambulance gets here. Under Cert, we teach you, here's what you're going to do when the ambulance isn't coming. How can I help people? How can I save lives in the amount of that? And again, most cities have this program. You can check around, go to the city's website, see if they do offer a Cert program. And most cities are actually happy to let you take, if there's a scheduling issue, you can take one in another city. They're happy to let people trade over and take it. CPR is not a skill that is taught as part of Cert, but it's worth having a CPR class as well. So it's a really good thing. Also, they go into more emphasis on damage assessment, how to size up a building, how to tell if it has issues, how to get your neighbor, how to do that, how to evacuate, a little bit on terrorism, and a section on disaster psychology, how people are going to feel and how people are going to react and how you can handle those situations in the event or large scale emergency. So should we take a 5-minute break here? Everybody good? I just saw a message pop up.
Yeah, I think let everybody take a quick break.
Okay, sounds good. We'll come back a little bit after 2:30.
And thank you, Jeff, for this. I'm going to download this right now. No, that's great. Thank you, Jeff. We'll add that.
Good deal. Yeah, thank you. That's a first.
I don't exactly remember when this started. Was it 27, 28? Start at 33?
We're at 28 is the next slide, right?
Yeah, okay, so let me see, it's 227, 29, 30, 232, like 30 seconds.
Oh, okay.
This is Cole with a comment. I'm on Marcia's board and a Cert instructor. Mentioned that the My Shake app on our website has availability of folks in 17 languages.
Oh,
And then the other thing is, do they know they're 5? Those 2 neighbors across from them, on either side of them, and behind them. That's going to be your cowboy.
Yeah, thanks, Cole. My Shake does not have 17 languages. This presentation you're watching does.
Pardon me.
Yeah,
Our website does, not My Shake.
right.
oh, okay.
Okay, so hopefully everybody is back and
Back.
ready for the next slide.
If I could just one more time, Cert, we had a comment, I agree with it. Somebody said, it's the best 20 hours of instruction you'll get to get yourself ready. And it's a great way to go. And also somebody mentioned the rule of 5, check your neighbors on each side, across the street and behind you. Take care of yourself and then just check around and be sure everybody's taken care of. And Cert, if you take that, it's going to go a long way to help you be ready to deal with that situation and be prepared for it. A lot of good resources there. Okay. And on to the next one. So another thing you can do is, you're going to want to keep track of everybody. And as you know, everybody's going to want to get on the phone at the same time. So it's probably going to be overloaded. You're trying to call people. So texting actually uses less bandwidth than phone calls. So if you send a text, even if it can't through, it kind of hang and it'll go through eventually. Another thing to think about is it's easier to call out of an area than to call into it. And my prime example, of course, back before cell phones, but back in the Loma Prieta earthquake, my folks were in Florida, excuse me. I was able to call them and let them know, hey, I'm okay. California did not fall in the ocean this time. But they had been trying to call me and obviously got busy signals because it was so busy. So something to think about with your family is having a designated number that everyone in your family knows. So you can call, Aunt Minnie in Montana and tell everybody, hey, I'm okay. And everybody will check in. You can actually pass messages that way. That's a good way to use them kind of as a message center. Another very good thing to think about is having a meeting location for you and your family. If something does happen, they go out the front door, you go out the back door, where are you going to meet? Maybe it's the big tree in the park, maybe it's the 7-Eleven next door, wherever it might be, kind of a relocation point so you know where you're going to go. So everybody knows that location and that's your rally point. So, if you get lost, if you're turned around, hey, we're all going to meet right here by the big oak tree or by the slide or by the pool, whatever it might be. You want to do that for your family. And if you're going to leave your home, leave a phone number. A good way to have contact with your neighbors. Let people know where you're going. If you decided to leave, we're getting out of here, let somebody actually know about it so they'll be able to find you. So text messages are better than phone calls. They use bandwidth. You have a better chance of getting through. Have a designated meeting location for your family. And if you're going to leave, try to let people know where you're going. So that's a good place to go. Okay, next up. Okay, so let's just imagine, let's do a little pretend thing here. A big earthquake happened today. We're going to assign you some different locations and ask you to think about how would you protect yourself? What are your surroundings going to look like after the shaking stopped? And what supplies do you wish you had? Those are the big 3 things we want you to think about. So Marcia, are you going to divvy folks up?
Yes, give me a second here
Okay.
and I will put you into breakout rooms. And then Cindy will put those questions in the chat. But I guess we should go to the next slide first, so that they know what they're doing.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, there we go. So for this particular exercise, if you're team 1, you're going to pretend that you're in the mall. Just pick a mall. It can be your favorite mall. Team 2, you'll be in your office. Team 3 will be in your bedroom at home. Team 4 will be in a car on the freeway. And team 5 will be in the kitchen, either at home or in the office, just anywhere there's a kitchen. So let's get you separated into your groups and we'll give you 10 minutes. Okay, so the predicted it happened. How did you protect yourself? What did things look like? And what kind of supplies you wish you'd had? You know, that's the, and you can tell, again, things are very different in each location. You know, mall's very different than your house, an office is different than your house, things like that. And in your car, you know, my wife tells the story in Loma Prieta, 1989. She was driving on Highway 101 and everybody pulled over at the same time because everybody thought they had a flat tire because the ground was shaking that badly. So the big thing in the car is you don't want to park under an overpass or, you know, under a street, anything that might fall on you. That's your big thing to look out for. Are we going to do a group discussion here, Marsha? Other folks chime in, or where are we?
Yeah, let's have group one talk about how, where were you and how did you protect yourself?
I'm going to just jump in. We were in the mall, and basically, again, saying you're in the mall is like saying so you're either in the mall itself or you're inside of store. So if it happened and you're in the mall itself, what we would do is number one, look for a way out, look for a safe way out. You know, avoid go the opposite direction of the wherever the major damage is, and also try to be the voice of reason and calm and get people, because we're certain that people would be panicking, so we'd want to get people out to a safe direction in an orderly fashion. We'd also be looking for potentially emergency exits, first of all, and first aid kits and first
Okay,
aid.
you're going too far, Jeff.
Okay, sorry.
How are you protecting yourself when the ground is shaking in a mall, the mall?
Oh,
Not in the store, just in the mall.
oh, okay.
And do you have any concerns about particular places that you might not want to be when you protect yourself?
I can tell everybody my nightmare is being at Home Depot.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a store. We're talking
Right,
about,
yeah.
again, a difference. The mall itself, if you're out in the mall as opposed to being in a store in the mall, if you're in a, okay, let's talk about we're in a store. We would, how we protect to stay away from or avoid, like glass displays would be breaking, stuff would, the hanging stuff would be falling. So you want to avoid that and try to get away from that and protect yourself from that.
Yeah, so still drop, cover, hold on,
Yeah.
Right.
but try to turn away from glass windows
Right.
and try to be out of the way, because will everyone drop, cover, and hold on?
No.
No, they will panic and run.
Right.
So try not to get trampled. How about, let's see, office, we didn't have anybody, but in your office, how would you protect yourself if you were in your office? Anybody?
I'd jump under my desk.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, yeah, because it's the safest place.
Secret hideout.
Yep, and
there's a lot of mitigation that you can do in your office. Get those heavy binders out of the flipper bins above your head. You know, make sure your file cabinet is turned away from your desk. So if it does, the drawers do open, they don't knock you out. Those kind of things.
And I just saw a note from Kaylin, avoid the windows. Look out for windows.
yep.
Windows
So-
are likely to break. They can flex
Yeah.
and break. So
And I know a couple stories of when we actually did drop, cover, and hold drills, like we will do on October 20th for the Great California Shakeout, where they went to go under their desk. In one instance, they couldn't get under there because they had put a bunch of supplies under there. And the other one couldn't get under because they saw a big piece of metal sticking down into the space that nobody knew about. So it's good to just crawl under there once in a while and see what it looks like. Okay, so then the rest of the surroundings, Cindy already mentioned stuff fell over. Are there any big objects that would fall over, or have you secured them all?
If you've got those tiles in the ceiling and that drop ceiling that many offices have, that entire unit can come down. So you may have lots of little straps of metal.
Yeah, the good news is it's not real heavy. I just thought of another war story. I'm sure we all have them. So I'm on the phone with well, actually, I got a phone call from my daughter who's in the Air Force living in Alaska. It was during COVID. They had a huge earthquake and she called me from under her desk, trembling, and she'd taken all my classes, but she said, I didn't know what to do. It started shaking and I just dove under my desk. So good muscle memory, right? And her bookcase fell down on her chair. So she was almost trapped. She was able to push it out of the way, but you don't want to question that drop cover and hold on. Has anybody ever heard of the triangle of life? Every once in a while, it raises its ugly head. It was something that went viral on the internet in the, I don't know, 90s, 2090s. A gentleman who spent most of his time working in other countries believed that when things fall down and collapse, that when an object collapses, it displaces air, and it will leave a little gap along the side of it in a triangle shape that, like, and he's saying if you were under it, you're going to get crushed. If you're on the side of it, the displacement of the crush is going to leave a little space there. Well, forget all that. In the United States and California in particular, the houses and objects are not designed to collapse and crush like that. But what he did do very successfully was cause confusion. And so when the next earthquake happened, then people stop for a second and say, should I drop cover and hold on, or should I get in the triangle of life? And in that moment of inaction, you can really get hurt. So make sure that you don't question yourself. You drop to the ground and get under something.
Yeah. Find something. Yeah, get under it. So something, if it falls on it, it falls on that, it doesn't fall on you. That's your key.
I've got just a little anecdote to share, talking about being in the office. This didn't happen during an earthquake, but it happened. It was during a Christmas recess, and I had to come into the office, and the emergency sprinklers had started leaking through that drop ceiling, and it was dripping into a bunch of different CRT monitors, which are always on, and it was a big, huge hazard. And it got me thinking, if there was an earthquake, most modern buildings have the fire suppression in there. Those things could break. And again, if the power is live, and most offices have all kinds of electrical equipment, you've got a potential, another problem to consider. I don't know how to mitigate against that. Hopefully during an earthquake, maybe the buildings have automatic electrical shutoffs or something in case that were to happen. But that's just one thing to consider.
Yeah, and when you realize the what if, then you can start to figure out a solution. And that's the thing, is stopping long enough to do the what if. How about team 3 in the bedroom? How did you protect yourself, and what did the surroundings look like? And I don't know who was in team 3, so.
I
No.
think there's a possibility that team 3 thought they were also in the kitchen.
Oh, okay. Well, then let's talk about in the bedroom. I think Lynn mentioned it on one of the slides. You should stay in bed.
Yeah.
Put a pillow over your head.
Yeah. Look out.
What do your surroundings look like?
Yeah, probably lamps on the floor.
Mirror might be broken.
This is Cole on the stay in bed comment. I believe it's safer to roll off of the bed so you have that bed protecting anything that might fall on you.
You can do that.
Yeah.
You need to be aware that there may be glass on the floor, because the biggest after the Northridge earthquake, the most injuries came from cut feet, because people jumped out of bed barefoot. And so there may be glass on the floor if you, but you may be able to roll off the bed and roll under the bed if you have room. If you don't have room to get under the bed, I would stay in the bed.
Yeah, depending on how high. And they
Yeah.
actually,
And that leads me to another comment, to have those shoes right next to where
Yeah.
you get into bed
Yep.
against versus the glass.
My personal experience during the '89 quake, I had just gotten home, literally just gotten home, and I was changing my clothes in the back bedroom, and it hit and it threw me on my big bed, and my daughter happened to be one bedroom over, and I tried to get out of bed. I couldn't get out of bed. The rocking was so, and I just yelled to her. I said, "Are you okay?" She says, "Yeah." I said, "Just stay where you are. We'll ride this one out." So staying on the bed was the safest thing, and I heard the neighbor's pool, the water sloshing, so I knew it was a big one. So again, in that particular case, I had no glass anywhere that could break, and nothing did break. I had a TV that fell in the garage, no big deal. But staying on the bed was the absolute safest spot. So it was me and my big bed in the back, and my daughter in her the middle room on her bed, and we just rode it out.
Yeah, that's great. And shouting to the family to just remind them to do what they should do and not try to run. That'll reduce the injuries too. So that was really good.
and just
Okay, how about,
before we go on, one more point on this slide. So if you look at that list there, the office, the bedroom, the kitchen, you can control that environment. You have the ability to mitigate it ahead of time. Get those things off high shelves, strap things to the wall. You can do to make it better there. At the mall, you don't have much choice. In the car, you don't. But in your home, you can do things ahead of time, so it's better when something does happen.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, how about the car? Who was room 4?
I was in room 4, Karen and Caitlin and
Patty.
Patty. There we go, Patty.
Okay,
I
so
think
how
the
did
main-
you protect yourself in the car?
Oh, well, we said we would stay in the car unless there
Yep.
were some mitigating circumstances, but and generally in the car, and maybe if we had something to put over our head, like I don't know, it could be a jacket, a pillow. I keep a pillow in my car, so
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah, and pull over.
The other big thing is usually under an overpass, not near a power line, and try to get away from oncoming traffic if other people pull over.
Yeah, right. That's the thing. Like if you're just in the middle of kind of nowhere in the car, you stay in the car. But yeah, obviously you have to leave the car if and it's like under a bridge or under, an overpass or even near, I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of places you would want to leave the car.
Yeah, be careful though, because if you're on an overpass and the car, you can't get out, the car's going to give you some protection, a lot more protection than if you start to run and the cars become now deadly weapons as you're trying to get past them. So be careful. It might be better to sit in the car and ride it out.
Yeah.
But you have to trust your gut at that moment. But
Maybe you can move the
knowing all
car.
the possibilities. Yep. Okay, anybody else from the car room have anything to say? What did the surroundings look like?
Just chaos,
Yep.
other
Great.
people freaking out, down lines, maybe broken water mains, maybe down trees.
Maybe
Or
some
it could
car
just be
accidents.
dead calm, or it could just be dead calm. Although that, I don't know. I was in a hurricane. I haven't been in an earthquake. So
I said a lot of like the most common thing I see on the news and stuff is debris falling off of buildings. So a lot of bricks and pieces of buildings and the little things from on, like what do they call them? When you go to a store and they have those little porchy things, whatever those are called,
Yeah, the
awnings.
outside, yeah.
Oh, awnings, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And again, a lot of times, particularly here in California, the buildings don't fall down, the things on the buildings.
Yes.
There's signs, you said there's signs, lights,
Yes.
post boards, things like they can come off and they can definitely whack you. So watch out for that. Situational awareness, that's the key. Look around and know what's around you.
And then just asking yourself, if I'm next to a building and the bricks are falling, it's safer to stay in the car. If I'm out in the open, it's safer to stay in the car. But the overpass, underpass is probably the one where you really have to weigh your options. Understanding that when you're out of the car, you're really vulnerable.
Yep.
Okay, kitchen. Who's in the kitchen? The place I do not want to be when the earthquake.
Yes.
Hey,
I
Marcia.
Yeah.
I was in the kitchen along with Norma
Yes.
and
And
Cindy.
I was in the kitchen too,
Okay.
and with Lynn and me, and I thought only 2 of us are in the kitchen.
Well, I think 2 groups were talking about the kitchen, which is fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can all share. Did somebody say, hey, Marcia, though, before?
I did. So regarding the car, I think the one thing that I learned from the Loma Prieta that I did not have was gas. And it was a huge, huge problem because I was in Foster City and I needed to get home to Sunnyvale. And, I'm kind of freaking out as I go down and all the gas stations were closed. And, finally, once I got a little further south to like say Mountain View. I don't let my gas car get out of gas like I used to. I used to go down to the like little tiny empty, and I don't do that anymore.
Yeah, totally agree. Half tank, don't ever go below. I get very anxious if my car goes below half because I want control. I want to be able to go somewhere if I have to. And then you brought up another good point about when you're away from home, the time it takes to get back to your place. Based on people that I talked to after Loma Prieta, it's like for every 10 minutes you are away from home, add an hour. So if you're 40 minutes away from home, it's going to take you 4 hours to get home. And that's about right.
And let me add one more thing onto that. And gas is a good point, but it's a good idea to have some cash with you. Good idea to keep cash, because if you go to if it is open, your ATM card, your debit card may not work. So you may need to have some cold hard cash, and don't have $100 bills.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Awesome. Okay, kitchen. How'd you protect yourself?
So this is Sabuhi. So for kitchen, we discussed that in case of earthquake, just turn off your cooktop, whether it's electric or gas, and cover the lid. And with the frying pan, if you're frying something, just don't add water, because then the fire, it gets fire and all that. And try to go under maybe under some countertop or table or dining table or something.
Yeah, do your best.
Yes, excuse me. How about going into the pantry, which is under the staircase?
And the thing is that for the earthquake that we're talking about, just like someone else said, they were thrown to the bed. You're not going to get an option. It's going to throw you to the ground, and the best you'll be able to do is crawl to the nearest safe place. So, if you're near a wall, if you're near a counter, a counter, if you can get under a table, even under a chair, get your head under a chair to protect your head. The little earthquakes, which you don't really need to stop and protect yourself because it's not shaking that bad. If you can walk, it's not shaking that bad. So, and then the turning, if you go to turn off appliances when the ground's shaking, you may end up getting hurt more. So protect yourself first. As soon as it stops shaking, you're already making the mental plan. I need to turn off I need to put a pot on, put a lid on the pot. I need to turn it off. But you probably won't be able to do that and protect yourself at the same time.
But if you're unfortunate enough to be in the kitchen and you're cooking, you want to try to move away from the stove.
Yes.
Duck and cover. Don't do it right by the stove. Get away from the stove, because if the stuff flies off, you don't want to get burned.
Yeah. And what do the surroundings look like?
Norma?
I think it depends.
You
If
know,
you have-
another thing that we talked about was having a fire extinguisher in the kitchen, which I can tell you I don't have. And if you have, you know, shelves in your kitchen just against a wall, they need to be secured against that wall, attached somehow. But we talked about cabinets, overhead cabinets could be under also, but you'll have flying dishware, glasses, cans of food, perhaps. There's a lot to consider, and it's kind of, you know, like a bit of a eye opener for me, because I don't think of a kitchen or being in the kitchen during an earthquake, but sure, you know, anyone could be.
Yeah.
Very little notice.
Flying saucers.
Right.
Yeah, we mentioned in our group, we talked about, so an event like a hurricane, you know, it's a tropical depression, now it's a tropical storm, that'll be here within 3 days. And, you know, or earthquake, you get 30 years notice, but you don't know when it's coming.
Right.
It could be the next 10 minutes, or it could be 10 years. So just have to be ready all the time.
Yeah. All right. So this exercise is something that you can do in the office with a group of people. You can set the time. We have a whole information sheet on how to conduct it. And there are other scenarios that you can use, like you could be at the beach, and you could be at a stadium, an arena, a theater. So it really is just asking yourself, how will I protect myself here, and what will my surroundings look like? And then you won't be so in shock if it happens while you're there, and you'll be much better prepared than most of the people.
Yep.
All right, ready, Lynn, to go on to the next?
Let's move on.
Okay.
Okay, so one answer is obvious: camping outside. You know, a lot of people, they're afraid to stay inside after a big earthquake, aftershocks, they just don't feel safe inside. So you can, ideally, if you have a motorhome, you know, perfect. You got a place to stay, a place to store supplies, and you can move around in it. So, but if you did decide to camp, what kind of supplies might you need? Let's think about that for a second. Is that up the next slide?
Yeah, think about your top 5 things.
Yeah. What is your top 5 things? What would you like to have?
Huge.
Is that an open question or?
Yeah.
You gotta have water.
Oops, you got muted.
I think Jeff, did you say water?
Yes, you gotta have water.
Yeah.
Karen says something to cook with.
And you need to think about too, people have different levels of comfort. Some people want to sleep on the ground and just have a little, you know, little backpack, and others might want something a little nicer. So there's some of that, you know.
What I would do is grab my go bag, which has all the necessary medications that I have to have and my family has to have, including, like you mentioned earlier, small you know, a couple $100 in small denomination. Just imagine I'm not gonna be able to go back into my house for a month. You know, what would I need? So it's, you know, got to have the water, anyway, water, and my go bag, which has the medicines and first aid kit and all that stuff. But okay, I'll yield.
Okay.
Sherilyn says pet supplies, sleeping bag, and pillows.
Yep. Very good.
You know, we talk about eating and taking food in, but we also have to talk about what happens when the food's done. And if you're camping in your backyard.
Yep. You think about that, how your sanitation supplies.
A small shovel, yes, ma'am.
5-gallon bucket with a, Red Cross has they actually do a supply kit in a 5-gallon bucket, and you have a toilet seat that comes with it. You can take the supplies out, put the toilet seat on, and you have an instant toilet.
Yep.
So something to think ahead, plan ahead. So let's go ahead. We'll talk about some of the top 5 supplies. And I'm sorry, I don't know who mentioned, water is a big deal. One of my favorites in emergency management, I always went by the rule of 3s. You can live about 3 minutes without oxygen, about 3 days without water, and about 3 weeks without food. So water is a big thing. You definitely want a clean supply of water, and you want to have about a gallon per person per day. roughly. I mean, maybe you can get by on less, but you definitely need water and need a clean supply of water that you're able to get to. And, you can have 100 gallons. I mean, it depends on where you're going to share it. I'm a big fan of a 5-gallon container, something you put in. If you're going to, the other thing with water and all these supplies we're going to talk about, you need to rotate them. You can't just put something together and expect it to last forever. Back in the day, I remember doing a presentation and we're at somebody's house, and we're talking about supplies. And I said, they said, yeah, we have supplies. And I said, let's take a look. So we went out in the garage and they brushed off the dust. And there was this stuff covered with dust. It was old. And I said, when did you put this together? And they said, well, right after the big earthquake in Loma Prieta, 1989. By that time it was 1997 or something. So that stuff does get old. So water, to me, is one of the big things. You definitely want to have water there. Another important thing to have is light. You want to be able to see. Earthquakes don't always choose to happen in the middle of the day when we have good visibility. So a flashlight, particularly, and if you need a flashlight, what do you need? You need batteries, either rechargeable flashlight or batteries, because it does you no good to have a flashlight if you don't have good batteries, so you can turn it on and it'll work for you. First aid kit, very good thing to have depending on your level of training. You can get large, paramedic kind of stuff, or just something very basic to help you treat for bleeding, open airway, treat for bleeding, and treat for shock. Great idea to know what's going on in the world around you. So radio is very important. Grab a radio, and again, battery powered. And they have some cool stuff now where you can get a hand crank radio or a solar powered. So there's much more technology out there these days, but and people say, what station should I listen to? I'd say the one that's on the air. Hopefully there's somebody will come on and let you know about what's going on. But water is a big thing. Now, food, you definitely need food, but you can live longer without food than you can without water. So when you are storing food, think about, stuff that you like. It's fairly easy. If you get a bunch of dehydrated food, then you need that much more water so you can actually use it. But there's a lot of stuff out there available now. Granola bars. There's a lot of stuff out there. Freeze-dried foods and other things. Canned goods. If you're going to have canned food, what do you need? Got to have a can opener.
Can opener.
Right? Yeah, because you can open it with a rock, but you lose a lot of the juice, So you definitely want, that's kind of your big five. You want water, light, first aid, food, and some form of communication. And again, cell phones are more ubiquitous now. Almost everybody has a cell phone, and you can get updates and things like that. But yeah, definitely a manual can opener. And again, if you can, they have solar things now. You get things you can actually charge your cell phones. You charge your cell phones and other things off the solar charger. So that's a good thing. How about some other supplies? And again, there's a lot of things you can have, no end of stuff. But cash, you can see in the upper left-hand corner there, cash is a good thing to have. Again, your debit card may not work, and don't have hundreds because people may not make change, right? So if you have some 5s and 10s and 20s, that puts you in a better case. If you wear glasses, you want to have a spare pair. Maybe take an old pair and put those in something safe where you have those available. You can cook outside on your charcoal grill. Never, ever, ever try to use a charcoal grill inside. Carbon monoxide poisoning will kill you. You cannot heat or cook inside with a grill. Medications. If you're on a specific medication, see if you can get some extra and have that. And as I'm sorry, I think Jeff, you mentioned, have a go kit. Have some of this stuff put together where you can grab it and take it with you. A whistle is a good deal. When I go skiing, I always have a whistle on my backpack. In the state of Florida, when you operate a boat, you're required to have a whistle with you so you can make noise and get help. If you're yelling, your voice is going to give out. But if you have a whistle, you can make a lot of noise for a long time. Swiss Army knife obviously does a lot of good stuff. And something people don't think about when you talk about emergency supplies, all your important documents, keep all that stuff in one place so you can take it with you. And of course, if you have pets, don't forget about your pets. That's a very important thing. You want to think about them as well. So have your pets there. Okay, next up. And get the facts. Have your trusted information sources. We mentioned earlier Nixle. Some people, if you have access, maybe Twitter, Facebook, Nextdoor, things like that. There are websites. The city and the counties have websites. So look around. There can be a lot of false information flowing. So get a trusted source and know what you're looking at so you can get that. Other resources you can use. Let's see, next one up. You have the Nixle sign up. Other resources, look around. What shelter housing is available? Generally, and again, here in Santa Clara County, we're pretty good about setting up. So there's sheltering. There's generally mental health, financial aid, some cleanup stuff. it takes a while to get this stuff going. It can take a little bit before this stuff actually gets rolling. So you have to be aware of that and kind of be patient. But Red Cross is pretty good at opening shelters in the event of a large scale disaster. And now there's also something called Immigrant Support. If you'll go ahead to the next one, Marcia. We have one more. There we go. So immigrants are eligible for help. You know, it's a safe place. If you go to, you know, a shelter, other places like that, you're not going to be reported. You're not going to be deported. I personally have been to fires where apartment buildings were emptied and people were, you know, perhaps were undocumented, were hesitant about going into the shelter. Red Cross does not care if you're a resident or not. Everyone has rights and it's safe to accept help. And there's a program now. People are eligible, but you should feel safe asking for help. There are protected, if we go to the next slide, please. There are protected areas. So schools, places of worship, food banks, medical facilities, evacuation routes, any place disaster relief is being provided in shelters. You know, you're not going to be deported. ICE is not going to come to those and get people out. So you can spread the word to people that are undocumented. They don't have to worry about that issue coming out with them. So at this point, I think I have just a couple slides left. Like to, there's other information available. You can hit the Cadre website. Our email is also there and the phone number. A lot of good information, many resources there. You can check those out and it'll give you a lot of stuff where you can find some good stuff. And this is finally, you have to think about what we're thinking about here. So there's different kinds. There's high risk, high frequency incidents, low risk, high frequency. What we're looking at is a high risk, low frequency. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does happen, bad things happen. So you want to think about that all the time. And risk is something we face every day, and earthquakes and tornadoes and all that stuff adds to it. Generally, we don't have tornadoes here, but earthquakes are a big one, so you have to think about that. And then finally, I think we have one more. We have one more slide, I believe. Yeah, so here's some ideas you can use both personally and at your organization. You know, getting people together to purchase emergency supplies. If you get all your staff or all your neighborhood together, you can probably buy in bulk and get a discount. Reminding people to get those out-of-state contact numbers so they have a way to reach out and be able to reach other people. Again, it's easier to call out of affected area to call into. Encouraging everyone to have a car emergency kit. You know, what if you are stuck in your car? If you're away from home, you may be staying in your car for a couple of days. Be nice to have some supplies. I always advise people for ladies in particular, if you wear high heels a lot, have a pair of sneakers, have some shoes in your car that are ready for you. Evacuation drills, excellent way to keep everybody prepared. You know, do a couple stage ones and then eventually do a surprise one, you know, to get people going. Visual reminders, it doesn't hurt around the business or even around the house to put up signs and posters to remind people about earthquakes and things like that. And you can find all that on the Cadre website. And finally, you can do a little quiz. Take a presentation like this, put a little quiz together and just ask her, hey, what if this happened, what would you do? You know, how would you react to that? What's your this? So that'll help people be better prepared and ready to react when something does happen. And I believe that is just about it for us. Are we on the last?
Yeah, it's up to me now. Just
okay.
We have a handout. Obviously, it'll get posted on the website in the section, the webinar section that's at the top of the preparedness page. The quiz, I personally have had good success with the quizzes, just asking a simple question like, what are the first 3 things you do after drop, cover, and hold on? And I'd send it out to all the staff. And then I would tell them I'll send them the answer tomorrow, but whoever replies to me will, you know, go on a raffle for a Starbucks card or something. But it's really fun to listen to everyone start talking about what those supplies are. And we've created a list of about 10 of those, and I want to keep building on that list so that you can just kind of keep bringing preparedness to the front of people's minds. And so all of these, everything that's listed here that Lynn mentioned, we have some detailed instructions on how you can use these in the workplace and just keep people thinking about preparedness, which then means that they're more likely to come to work if their family is ready. All right. Our next presentation is next Thursday. It's from 3 to 5. It's identifying your disaster mission. It's for faith organizations.
It's a week from Thursday, not day
Oh,
after.
no, you're right. It's,
29th.
boy, we have a lot of time to prepare for that one. If you if you could forward that information, the link for the registration is under the event section of the Cadre website. And then we just are going to do a big introduction on what the different types of activities are needed or resources are needed after disasters and how churches might be able to fill some of those gaps.
Yep.
And lastly, there is a survey that should pop up as soon as we turn off the Zoom. And if you could please, it just asks you to rate the presentation, and do you want us to schedule a live or Zoom presentation in another language for clients. All of the materials are also free to anyone that wants them to personalize them for their organization. All of the translations, you can have them. We just want to make sure that the word is getting out to everyone. And are there any questions?
Marcia, this is Cole with a comment. Have you posted or brought up, because I wasn't in every moment of this presentation, the 4 $20 dollar store lists that are a good starter?
No, and I'm about to post that online. I haven't posted it yet. So one of the things we're doing in our outreach in the community is we created a list of supplies, emergency supplies for the family, for first aid, and for pets. And we bought all the supplies at the dollar store. And so that list is available and people are so excited to get it. Number one, because they know where the dollar store is and they know that it won't be expensive to prepare. So, so we'll share that also in the workshop materials so that you have that and you can, again, customize that and give it to your clients to get them to be ready as well, and staff. All right, and with that, I think we're
Before we close, I just want to thank everybody for taking time out of your day to sit through this class, and hopefully we're a little bit better prepared. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Everyone.